بسم الله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا فمن يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله ثم ما بعد. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. MashaAllah, Sister Maha Ahmed is good friends with my wife, and she came over and told us all about the trip, and I take it was a good trip. MashaAllah, MashaAllah. This is a class that we've dedicated to talking about the names and attributes of Allah. And it's very hard to overstate the importance of these names and attributes, because when people are looking for God, these names and attributes instruct us how. What are you looking for? Right? These are, now, of course, we actually don't believe that Allah's attributes and names are limited to 99. These are 99 names mentioned in the Quran, because these are the ways that God presents these names are expressive of the most salient or the most important, for lack of a better word, functions of the divine in our lives and in the existence of creation generally. And we've come to a name today, really two names that are of particular importance. One is Qarib, or close, and the other is Mujib, the one that responds. These names are always mentioned together. Qarib al-Mujib, right? Allah is close and Allah responds. Now we want to deal with the first of them, Qarib, or the one who is near. It's interesting. Imam Ghazali says that one of the disadvantages of being consistent and being very close is that some things' reality is often obscured by nearness. Like if you see, and this can be taken literally and also figuratively. So let's look at the figurative meanings first. They say the people who benefit least from a scholar are his family and his neighbors, because they're so close that they don't see him or her in that way. To them, it's just, oh man, so-and-so. Now, you'd be surprised. People that we think of as quite impressive, people that are very celebrated outside of their neighborhoods, outside of their localities, observe them in their own communities. And people treat them like yesterday's newspaper. Right? And then you would see the same person travel to a different city, and everybody would be clamoring around them, trying to get a word with them, asking them for advice, asking them questions. And you look and say, hell, we do a little halakha on Wednesday nights or something like that. And you'd be surprised by how this person is, esteemed and highly regarded. Why? Because you're close to the person. You can't really see the reality of something that you're very, very close to. Also, literally, Imam Ghazali, he said that if you ask any person on any given day, what's the most impressive thing you see right now? Just person standing out, anywhere. Tell me, what's the most impressive thing that you can see right now? He said, they would give every answer besides the sun. No one would say the sun. They would say this building. They would say this car. They would say this piece of jewelry. They would say this tree. He said no one would say the sun, in spite of the fact none of what they see would be possible without the sun. Right? None of what everything they're identifying, it would be, everything they're identifying would be impossible without the sun. Right? The sun is the means that Allah uses to sustain life on the planet. But he said, nobody will say the sun. And I've tested this, by the way. I've asked people, man, what's the most impressive thing you said? People give every answer besides the sun. Imam Ghazali said, you know why? Because the sun is so consistent in what it does. It's so consistent in what it does, it's easily taken for granted. That's just the sun, right? Right? We don't recognize that had the earth been even infinitesimally more distant from the sun, we wouldn't be alive because life, it would be too cold. And if earth was even a little bit closer to the sun, there would be no life because it would be too hot. He said, but this is the case of consistency. This is the case of nearness, right? They say if you stand, if you're like, you have your face against a mountain or anything that is impressively large, you can only see the part of it that your eyesight can behold. It's not until you step back with some distance do you see the complete grandeur, right, of this physical mass. Such is the case of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's nearness to us, right? Allah says he is nearer to us than our jugular vein. And Imam Ghazali says the very fact that people can deny Allah is actually a proof of how near God is. It's just like the very fact that they can deny God, it's actually a proof of how near God is, right? That God is so near. God's existence is absolutely essential. And because of that, it can become something almost routinized. It can become something almost routine that you don't even think about, right? Because it's so consistent, it's so solid, right? It's so close. And what the Muslim wants to do is to recognize God is close, right? Even, and this is a perennial question. This is not just a modern question. People are looking for God. I'm trying to find, I'm seeking. I wish I could have some kind of encounter with the divine. And all, just as they're doing this, they're breathing involuntarily. They're not even thinking about, right, that God is sustaining them in every moment. And they're thinking, I'm trying. Where is it? I just don't know. I just don't feel anything. I can't see anything. If only God could give me a sign. Ibn Sa'illah, he said, the one that knocks at the door will be granted entry. Meaning, if you keep knocking at the door of God, you will be granted entry. He said, but even saying that, when was the door ever closed that one would need to knock for it to be reopened? The door is it's there. The only thing one needs to do is just step through it. It's there, right? And, we have to remember that, God is close. He's Al-Qarib min hablil warid. God is closer than your jugular vein. Whenever God mentions in the Quran his closeness, God mentions that he knows everything that occurs to everyone. I've recently been having just these moments of just amazement, really, with the fact that God is God. Like sometimes I just see all these different kinds of people, all these different periods of history, all of these different forms of nature and natural life. And I just keep reminding myself, Allah is the God of all of that. SubhanAllah. Not just the God of Muslims, not just the God of humans, not just the God of the planet Earth, but the entire cosmos. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the God of all of that. And it's like, wow, right? It's something that it impresses upon you a sense of God's transcendence. That man, God is above all of this. God is over all of this. But then, huwa aqrab min hablil warid. God is closer than your jugular vein. That gives you a sense of what? God's immanence. God is close. That is enough to almost make me faint. And you think, okay, God is he's the God of Pluto and Uranus, and the God of the Milky Way, and the God of, the entire cosmos, and yet he knows every single solitary thought that occurs to you. Not only does God know what we say and what we do, but God is aware of every thought that occurs to you. Even just like a fleeting notion, like you think something very quickly, God is aware of every single thought that occurs to you. And this is why the Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith that should inspire us with great confidence concerning God's mercy, that when one of us conceives of doing good, we think of doing good, God gives us a reward just for the idea. If you actually execute what you're thinking, God gives you 2 rewards. So if you make an intention to do something good and you're unable to follow through on that intention, just the fact that the idea of doing good occurred to you, God rewards you for that. If you actually follow through and execute the idea that you were thinking, God gives you double reward. But when an evil thought occurs to you, you don't get any demerit. There is no punishment. There is no accountability for the bad ideas that occur to you. And if you choose not to act on the bad ideas that occur to you, God gives you a reward for that as well. Allah is merciful. But the fact that Allah knows those things, just think about that. That's a sign of his closeness. Don't think that just because God is, the Lord of the planets and the cosmos and Everest and the Atlantic and the Pacific, that he is not intimately aware of everything that's happening with you. He's Al-Qarib. Sometimes you just have those moments where you think, rough estimate, and I know you know, how many people are on the planet today? 7 billion? 7 billion people. And we're just talking human beings. We're not talking other species of life. And if all of them, now you have no idea of how many jinn are in existence. We don't know that. And if all of us asked Allah for everything we wanted at the same time, God could grant every single request, and it would not diminish what God has in his dominion at all. And that every person could make dua at the same time, and Allah is intimately aware of what occurs to them because he's close. Imam Ghazali has a beautiful perspective here. And he says, in reality, your dua, the Prophet ﷺ said, ad-du'a'u mukhul ibadah, that the prayer that you make to God is the essence of your worship. Imam Ghazali says that the real purpose of dua is just that you would recognize your need for God. That's it. And this is why it's the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it's something we should do regularly. But if you believe that you have to articulate your needs for God to know it, you're mistaken. Don't stop making dua. I don't want you to stop making dua. That's not the point of this reference. Don't stop making dua. It's the sunnah of the Messenger of God. It's the sunnah of the righteous. Maryam made dua, right? It's the sunnah of the righteous men and women. It's their way. But Imam Ghazali says it's really just a reminder of your need for God. You are not informing God of something. When you say, Ya Allah, please guide me. Ya Allah, please, in whatever way you want to, direct the person to me that I should marry or something like this. Right? It's not that before you said that God didn't know that you wanted to get married. No, the words are, they're important. I don't want you to stop making dua. But this is about God's name, Al-Qarib. God is closer to you than that. You see, people don't know what I need until I articulate my need. They wouldn't know. And even, and to be honest, even people that we're very close to, our wives, our husbands, our siblings, our best friends, they don't need for us to speak to know what we need. Sometimes we just look a certain way. You seem like you want to talk about something. Everything okay? They can just look at you. You know, my grandmother, Allah yarhamuha, I would come in the house, she would just start preparing food. You look hungry. Allah yarhamuha, baby, you look like you need something to eat. I didn't need to say, Grandma, I'm hungry. Could you make me something to eat? No, you look like you need something to eat. And these are just people that are close to us. What do you think about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? You know, Ibrahim famously said, as he was being cast into the fire, the angel Jibreel alayhi salam comes to him. Alaka haja? Do you have any need? أما منك فلا فأما من الله فعلمه بحال حسب عن سؤالي. As for a need from you, no. As for a need from God, his knowledge of my circumstance obviates the need to ask a question. God knows what I need. I don't need to ask, right? If somebody is patiently persevering in poverty, they should be raising their hands, asking God to bless them, to enrich them, to make them independent financially. You think God didn't know that you're in a state of need? Somebody is struggling as a young Muslim man or a young Muslim woman to hold on to their chastity, to be steadfast, to be patient, to not offend anybody else by unjustifiably possessing that person with their eyes, trying to lower their gaze. You think God doesn't know that they want to get married? You think God doesn't know? Of course God knows. God knows even the thoughts that occur just to our hearts. Everything you're thinking about, God knows. SubhanAllah. Like he's Qarib, he's close. You know, and I was talking with one person. And in fact, it was my son. And my son is getting to that age where children naturally begin to express a little skepticism. So he said, Dad, how do you know Allah is real? We can't see him. We never heard his voice. Right? How do you know that Allah is real? How do you know that Allah exists? I said, son, because I exist. Right? That's how I know. Right? Man arafa nafsahu arafa rabbah. Whoever knows himself knows his Lord. I exist. That's how I know that Allah exists. Right? Allah is close. And I know that were it not for Allah, I wouldn't exist. Every time I try to conceive, and I do, maybe I shouldn't, and if you guys don't. But I try to conceive of my existence without God. It just seems improbable to me. Wait. I try to think, what if every time I think of my existence, I think God must have created them. So even when people are looking for God, you don't have to look far. Right? God is close. Once the Sahaba, radiallahu anhum jami'an, they were returning from battle. They had been victorious. And every time they crossed the valley, they would scream, Allahu Akbar, very loudly. Prophet ﷺ came to them and said, you're talking to Allah. He's not distant so that you would need to yell. Allah is close, right? He's not distant so that you would need to yell. Allah is close, right? Even when you sit remembering Allah inaudibly, making no sound, maybe your lips aren't even moving, Allah still hears that remembrance. La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. One of my friends would always walk around. Alaykum salam wa rahmatullah. One of my friends would always walk around with a sibha or a tasbih, dhikr beads, more popularly. Like Sheikh Zeki is wearing around his neck. And, I converted to Islam. So I asked questions about everything. Right? And I saw him using this. I said, why you always carrying that? Is that like some kind of Muslim rosary or something like that? We're not Catholic. Why you always carrying that? What's to that? I'll never forget what he told me. He said, the tongue and the heart are connected. He said, first, one will make dhikr, saying, La ilaha illallah, for instance. There's no God but Allah. There's no God but Allah. There's no God but Allah. He said, but as she is saying it, it's not, she isn't really realizing it. There's not a lot of awareness. It's just something you're saying all the time. But you're not really thinking about it. He said, then as your focus deepens, you start to actually feel it as you say it. You're saying, La ilaha illallah. And every time you say it, there's mushahada. You're witnessing divine oneness. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. There's nothing worthy of worship except God. There's nothing worthy of worship except God. There's nothing worthy of worship except God. He said, eventually, your heart will be saying it even when your mouth is not saying it. He said, you start with the mouth. Then you couple the mouth and the heart. Then the heart is saying it even when the mouth is not moving. He said, that is why we make dhikr. I was like, yeah, give me some of those beads, man. That is why we make dhikr first. He said, and it's period. You may spend 10 years not even thinking about it. Then you may spend 10 years witnessing. Then you may spend another 10 years, the mouth is not even moving, but the heart is still making dhikr. Right? Because Allah is close. And when the heart makes dhikr, Allah still beholds that dhikr. You don't have to speak. God is close. And that leads us to the second name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Al-Mujib, the responsive, right? The one who responds. The Quran mentions the verse, فَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي وَيُؤْمِنُوا بِي لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْشُدُونَ or لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْشُدُونَ. Now, the Quran says, فَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي, when my servants ask about me, إِنِّي قَرِيبٌ, I am close. Now this is a unique Quranic verse because there are many places where questions are posed to the Prophet ﷺ. And Allah says, قُلْ, right? For instance, قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبُكُمُ اللَّهُ وَيَغْفِرَ لَكُمْ ذُنُوبَكُمْ. say, if you love God, then follow me. God will love you and forgive you of all of your mistakes. Here, God says, when my servants ask about me, he doesn't say, tell them, Qul inni qarib. He doesn't say, tell them I'm close. Because even then, he would have made the prophet an intermediary between his closeness and his servants. The prophet would have been saying, Allah's close. Inni qarib. No, I am close. You don't tell them I'm close. Ujibu da'wata da'i idha da'ani. I respond to every person that calls upon me. Allah didn't say, Ujibu da'wata kulli muslimin da'ani. He didn't say, I respond to every Muslim that calls upon me. I respond to every person, every da'i, every caller who calls upon me, I respond. You know, I think I said this to you guys before, but you know, one of my teachers many years ago said that he was talking to a Christian woman, and she had a very interesting logical argument. She said, I pray to God through his son, Jesus Christ. We seek refuge in Allah. She said, but God always answers my prayers. Wouldn't this be, if this wasn't the way God wanted me to call upon him, but he's answering my prayer every time I call upon him like that, wouldn't that be deception? Wouldn't that be like God is deceiving me? And the teacher looked at us and said, how would you respond to this woman? I said, I would respond to her till I'm gonna call you. I asked you. I said, yeah, how would you respond to her? I respond to her, let me call my teacher. He said, you should respond to her by saying, God's responding to her and answering her prayers is confirmation for her that God listens and he responds. He's Mujib. Even if you call incorrectly, he responds. There are people who pray to idols and God responds. Even if you call me incorrectly, I respond. Now, I've done what I'm supposed to do. Do what you're supposed to do and worship me the way I told you to worship me. Right? You know, imagine dialing the wrong number and getting the person you were trying to get every time. Just dial any numbers. Hello, I'm here. But if you want to reach me, try dialing 1. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you want to reach me, just dial 1. That's all you have to do. Nothing else. 1. Just dial 1. That is how you reach me. We still got a phone, dial everything else. Attributing divinity to everything else. God still responds. Says what? I told you. Just dial 1. Told you. Just dial 1. Direct line. Direct line. No, I'm just go ahead and try to read through all these intermediaries. They told me they could connect you. Listen. Just dial 1. And you'll get straight through to me. And the human being, no, I'm gonna call all these other people. They keep telling me that they can get in touch with you for me. I'm gonna call them, and then they're gonna reach out to you, and they're gonna tell you what I need. Yes. This is our state. Right? But even when we dial all of those other numbers, God still responds. God still answers. God still answers. You know, I was sitting with one of my teachers, and I'm sure I've mentioned this before. I mean, I know Sonya knows, but he was talking about kind of the basis of religious feeling. And he said that he was watching National Geographic, and they had this, they were looking at this pride of lions. lions hunt together. And this pride of lions was about to go out and go hunting. They went, they found what do you call a group of gazelles? Yeah, fine, What do you call a group of gazelles? A herd. They found a herd of gazelles. The weakest one, the slowest one, the one that couldn't get away. They attacked it, devoured it, ate it. Like you expect lions to. Ate it, flesh all over their jaws, and Then somehow they captured this indigenous tribe, right? And this indigenous tribe was also about to go hunting. But they had all of these very particular rituals that they had to do before they went hunting. So it was a rule. Any man who wants to join us on this hunting expedition cannot make love to his wife the night before. We don't know where they get these rituals. And if you want to go with us on a hunting ritual, you have to give something in charity. And if you want to go with us on this hunting ritual, you have to make 7 circuits around the village. You have to walk around our entire village 7 times, and then you can come with us and go hunting. And then he asked us, he said, what was the difference between the lions hunting and the people hunting? What do you think the difference was? What do you think the difference was? The lions didn't have any rituals, right? There is this, these are just Aboriginal people. Human beings have this irrepressible sense that the things that impact them are more than what is perceptible. That the outcome of events has more to do with than just what they can see. Like this is something that human beings, and this is what, there are many names for this. Some people say luck. When a person says good luck, good fortune, there's this irrepressible sense that human beings have that things going right are not simply about things we can instinctually perceive. That there's more here than that. There's more here than that. And because of that, and this is a well-known view of many anthropologists, they say because of that, religion and religious ritual developed. This is how they explain, right? We understand that Allah created Adam, but religious ritual developed as a means of human beings trying to entreat unseen forces for protection, unseen forces for blessing. That the human beings have this sense that there are unseen forces controlling the outcomes of events. And if I want to get on the side of that unseen force, certain things are required of me. Rituals or a certain kind of discipline, sacrifices. There are certain things I have to do to get on the side of this unseen force so that I can be protected by this unseen force. Because there is so much in my life that I can't control. So I want the unseen forces to control me. He said that would be a natural response of any conscious being. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot. Tomorrow could bring a hurricane. Tomorrow could bring a rain that, nourishes my crops. Tomorrow could bring a rain that wipes out my crops. I don't know. Right? I don't know. He said, what Islam says is that is the correct feeling. But whenever you feel that, the only place that should be taken is to God. That's what our religion is about. Not to statues, not to other living creatures, not to, anything else that we've conceived of. God is whenever you feel that, that feeling that I'm in need of protection, I'm in need of help. There are things on the horizon that are uncertain. That is what directs you to God. And if you don't place your faith in God, you will inevitably place your faith in something else. You see, and that's one of the great insights of the story of Noah and his son. The story of Noah and his son. Clearly, the flood waters in this particular locality were rising. And Noah, his faith was in God and what he received from God. Come aboard the vessel, you and your family will be delivered. His son put his faith in his reasoning. That ship won't make it. That mountain, that's the highest place in this village. That's where I'm going. And Noah is telling him, son, la asima al-yawma. On this day, nothing can protect us except God. Follow me. Irkab ma'ana. Ride with us, son. Don't separate from us, son. Come on, Dad, I don't believe all that, man. Right? You will end up putting your faith in something. So in that story, it's not simply, he put his faith in his logical deduction. Waters rising, mountain high. Yeah, that makes sense. Water's rising, mountain is high. I'm gonna go there, right? Some people put their faith in money. The money's going to insulate me from hardship. And in a flash, we can lose everything. Some people put their faith in their cleverness. Some people in their network. All of my friends are millionaires. I know I'm straight. Right? Everybody I know is rich. Even if I fall off, they're still going to be on. Financial catastrophe, everybody falls off. SubhanAllah. SubhanAllah. So whenever you feel that concern about the future, it's not that you can make up rituals to entreat those unseen forces, right? To appeal to those unseen forces for the outcome that you want. Just call upon God. God is telling you. It's not that you have to create all of this. Just call upon God. Just call upon God. It's the way that it works. He's Mujib. He responds. And lastly, before we open for some questions, comments about this or anything else, it is important to remember that in asking Allah, you never lose. You never lose in asking Allah. Either A, God will give you what you want. Sometimes you ask and you get what you want. You say, oh Allah, I would like, oh Allah, give me. And by the way, it is not bad adab to demand from Allah. It's not, Arabic is beautiful in that way, that you can make a demand. And a demand is always contextualized in the Arabic language. English, I don't know if English has this much nuance, this much detail. In Arabic, a command is always contextualized by the one you're speaking to. So if I'm speaking to somebody that's my subordinate, like my son Najash, and I say, if I do this, it's taking this, it's amr, it's order, do it. Because he's my subordinate, I'm over him. If you say to someone who is your peer, someone who is, not under you, but on the same level as you, it is a request, an ask. It's really a very direct way of saying, please do this, right? Because I'm not in any position to command you. I'm not in a position like anybody in this room, nobody in this room has to do what I say. So if I say, Sonny, please, if I don't even say please, I say, Sonny, give me some water. It's not an actual order because I'm not over her in any way, right? We're peers. It's a request, please get me some water. On the other hand, if I say it to Najashi, give me some water, that's an order for him. If you say it to someone who is above you in rank, right? It is an appeal. It's tadarru, it's an appeal. So if Najashi says to me, Dad, get me some water, even if he says it like that, it's an appeal to me, right? He's appealing to me as someone over him. And if you say it to Allah, it's dua. Those four say, if you say it to Allah, it's dua. Allah, liberate the Muslims. Allah, enrich me. Bless me. Give me clarity. Give me certainty. Right? Raise our community. Aid us in our difficulty. It's dua. Right? And when you make dua in that way, it's understood to be an expression of certainty. Right? They actually say it's bad adab to make dua with Allah as if you're, oh Allah, if you want to, I don't know. I don't know. If you, if you feel so inclined to bless me, if you feel like it were a good thing for you to enrich me, then, if you want to. That's actually not the way the Prophet ﷺ would make dua to Allah. He would use very, very direct language, right? And that's understood to be adab with Allah. You ask Allah forcefully. You don't ask Allah circuitously or kind of in a roundabout way. You ask Allah forcefully, right? Knowing that Allah will respond. Or Allah will delay what you want for the time that is best for you. I remember, true story, there was a time in my life where I thought I had just started kind of working for myself. I was making a few dollars, and I was convinced that the thing that would make my life complete was a Range Rover SUV with the 4.6 liter engine, not the 4.0, not the 4.0. No. It had to be the 4.6 with the piping on the leather interior. I had to have it, right? So I'm there going to different dealerships, trying to strike deals. Everywhere I went, no. Price wasn't right. This wasn't right. That wasn't right. Just could not get this car. Right? Yeah, you need a little more money. Come back. When you're really ready to crack the piggy bank open, young fella. Hit me on the chin. Good try, Tyke. Nice try, little buddy. Come back when you're a little heavier. I said, man. Maybe 2 weeks after that, the opportunity to study Islam abroad presented itself. And of course, I moved on it. And I think to myself, if I had some kind of contractual relationship, or buy here, pay here, or some kind of scenario where I was paying for this car, that would have just been one added layer of difficulty trying to leave the country. Well, yeah, I gotta figure out, I gotta sell this car, how to pay for it as I'm abroad. And just the fact that I didn't have it ended up being a blessing. I remember going to the airport thinking to myself, Allahu Akbar. I'm so glad I wasn't able to get that car. You know what I'm saying? I'm so glad I wasn't able to get that car. Because if I had it, it would have just been another layer of something I had to deal with, thinking how I was going to handle this, how I was going to handle that. MashaAllah, I'm so glad I wasn't able to get that car. Right? So sometimes Allah delays what you want until the time that is right. Right? Sometimes what you want is not good for you. You want something, and Allah gives you what you need, what is good for you, instead of what you want. You're asking for this, asking for this, asking for this. You know how many brothers I know that asking Allah to put it in the heart of one woman. It's gotta be her. It's gotta be. It has to be. This man praying every night. Beautiful, righteous women are expressing interest. She did inquire about you. So and so was asking if you were single. Her. Yeah, right. She might not be good for him. She might not be good for him. Like, it might not be the best thing. We all make istikhara. And at the end of it, we say, when kana sharran li bi dini wa ma'ashi wa aqibati amri wasrifni anhu wasrifni anhu. If it's not good for me in my faith and in the way that my life ends and in my livelihood, take it away from me. Take me away from it. Take this out of my life. And that's why I tell people, if you're making istikhara, rejection is not rejection. Rejection is just clarity. That's all rejection. It's just clarity. Okay, this wasn't it. This wasn't it. And I asked Allah, if this isn't it, take it out of my life. Right? And if it is, decree it for me. Right? Sometimes Allah doesn't give you what you want, doesn't give you anything to compensate for what you asked for in this life, but delays it until the akhirah, until you meet Allah. Sometimes it's delayed all the way until you meet Allah. And of course, there it's even better than anything you could have imagined. But these are the only things that happen when we make dua. So keep asking Allah. Keep asking Allah. And remember, I think one of the dangers of revealed religion is that you can get so fixated on the period of revelation, the stories in the Quran, the stories of the Prophet, that you forget the miraculous is still happening. It's not over. Right? Sometimes we forget that. The miraculous is still happening. In fact, in many ways, the miraculous is becoming more commonplace. SubhanAllah. Man, recently I saw there was a well-known Muslim hip-hop artist expressing disbelief about some of the stories of miracles in the Quran. And the thing that I thought was most interesting about all of this is that the people among whom the Quran was revealed really had no analog for the miracles. Like, there was nothing that they could even compare that to. So if the Prophet ﷺ said, I flew from Mecca to Jerusalem and back in the span of a single night, there was no analog. There was nothing where they could say, no kind of life. We actually live in a time where somebody can fly from Mecca to Jerusalem maybe 4 or 5 times in a single night. Easy. On a plane. You can go from Mecca to Jerusalem and back maybe 4 or 5 times in a single night. Easy. So we actually live in a context in which this is something that can happen. You know that it can happen. You say that you believe in God, but you're so arrogant that you think it can only happen in the ways that you're familiar with. No, it can only happen through aeronautical technology. But it can happen. You acknowledge it can happen. but it would require the means of a plane and jet propulsion and jet fuel. It can only happen like that. The human being is remarkable. So you believe it can happen, but it can only happen like you say it can happen. Strange. We actually, like, I don't see how more of our exploratory science isn't opening us to the ideas of limitless possibility. It's actually making us more arrogant. Like, if you are a keen observer of natural science, you should be saying, we're learning that more and more things can happen. More, like, you know, our understanding of what can happen is وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِّنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. God says, and of knowledge you have only been given a little bit. Right? Of knowledge you have only been given a little bit. So you don't, I mean, how much do you think you know? You've only been given a little bit. And we have been a very species in terms of knowledge. Although I don't know who I'm comparing us to. Maybe jinn have more knowledge. In fact, it's actually mentioned in many books that jinn do have more knowledge, right? But you know, at the very least, we've been intentional about knowledge. There are schools, discourses. We've been very intentional about knowledge. But to look at all of that and say, and in terms of what really happens, how it happens, you still only know just qalila, just a small amount. So it's okay to make dua for things that are improbable, because the miraculous does happen, right? And when it happens, don't forget to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Especially if it happens through a way that's less remarkable, a way that you understand its asbab, you understand how it happened. Don't forget that it's still miraculous. It's still miraculous. You know, on this idea of just commonplace miracles. You know, probability is interesting. You know, after you can get to a certain place in probability that it almost becomes like, it's almost zero. It's almost negligible. That's almost like somebody hits like the little lotto or something like that. It's amazing because the probability of getting all of those numbers correctly is closer to zero than it is to one. So it's really like, it's pretty improbable that anybody would hit little lotto. And yet, and some people do. Some people actually can get, how many, y'all should know, how many numbers for the lotto? It's like 8 or 9 or something like that? 7? 7, and the numbers are 1 through 100. 1 through, you know, Ron, you know, you know, somebody's gonna lotto. Might as well be, you know. No, but I remember people talking about, you know, probability, saying that the probability of that occurring is closer to zero. He said, but you want to know an even greater probability. He said, man, when all of us were created, the amount of sperm cells, the amount of sperm cells that could have potentially fertilized that egg are in the billions. Billions. Right? And you think it was just you. You think it was just you. That you're literally just 1 out of a billion. You. You, just 1 out of a billion. You. Wow, it's quite impressive. 1 out, and he didn't say billion, billions. of sperm cells, right? When a man and a woman are together, racing to fertilize that egg. And you think that out of that billion, it was you. Just by chance that maybe that there was a chance it could have been different sperm cells and it would have been someone else. It was you. You were one out of a billion. But God decreed that. It wasn't something that happened. It's just, wow, I really lucked up. Because if not, I wouldn't have been brought into existence. It would have been some other sperm cell to fertilize the egg. I don't know. That's why he said, and when you were ensouled and your spirit was installed, when you were in the womb of your mother, God did that. He said, your spirit is already holy. God did that. God made you, right? And this life is your test. So miraculous things do happen, man. The fact that, I just saw one secular person trying to wrap their mind around this, a scientist, just, a scientist, but not a nihilist. He's a scientist, but he still wants people to appreciate life. And he said, if you ever need confirmation that your life is special, just know that how many sperm cells were racing to fertilize the egg and happened to you. So, man, the chance that you would exist is like 1 in some billion. He said, man, you should wake up feeling purposeful every day. This person, no God belief, no nothing. But he recognizes the fact that you exist as you is something miraculous. You is something miraculous, right? So, the miraculous still happens. So ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for what you want. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. And we'll open for any questions that anyone might have, inshallah. Could be about this, could be about anything else. I know Irfan probably has a good question about something else. Yes. We should, I think, it's very difficult to say. Muslims have always welcomed travelers, guests, wayfarers, and hosting a traveler was something that was considered a fard kifaya, a communal obligation within the Muslim community. The reason for that is because Muslims never understood anyone to be taking food out of their mouths. When you look at the hostility toward, immigrants, it's usually, and it's a strange thing too. And it shows you something about a people. You have an economically depressed community who will maintain it. These people come here and take our jobs. Strange. You never go downtown and see white people entering their offices and saying, these people are taking our jobs. Never. You never say that. You never say that. Because you have the scarcity mindset that you feel like we're all out here fighting for these crumbs. Whatever crumbs come off the table, we're fighting for those crumbs. Muslims never understood rizq in that way. That's why Muslims were never like that toward travelers. They never understood rizq in like this. Wait, this person is going to come into our village and then eat all of our food. Whatever Allah writes for them is for them. Right? And whatever Allah writes for us is for us. And in fact, in giving, we end up receiving more from Allah. Don't worry about it. But human beings are weak. Like when you see, stinginess, bukhul, stinginess. Stinginess is a sign of the fragility of human beings. Like you really believe when you see somebody being stingy, and I've been stingy many times in my life. The laughable thing is, damn, what do you think you're holding on to? What do you that you're holding this so tightly? Not my Jane and maybe $21. What do you think you're holding on to? What are you holding on to so tightly? Don't you know that God is the one giving you your job as the means? What are you holding on to so tightly? What do you think you're holding on to so tightly? The other thing that I think is there is, and we have to be very careful about this, man. I understand that communities, look, I'm not a politician, and I do understand the argument for controlled immigration. Meaning, if you have a large influx of people whose presence was not anticipated, they're undocumented, and it exposes our community to certain risk because it becomes very difficult to I guess place communal expectations on these communities because they're essentially functioning in the society as unknowns. What if they rob somebody? What if they kill somebody? What if they, et cetera, et cetera? I understand that there's some merit to that argument. There's some merit to the argument that controlled immigration is better than uncontrolled immigration. I understand that. Me inviting you to my house is a lot better than you just showing up and just saying, I'm hungry. Because if I invite you, I prepared a meal for you, right? On the other hand, life happens. If you do just show up unannounced, man, I'm hungry. I'm not gonna turn you away. Wasn't what I expected. I'm not gonna turn you away. Certainly would have been better if you called. But maybe your maybe your circumstance was one in which you could not call. A lot of the migrants are asylum seekers. Man, look, and if America is being honest, a lot of the political turmoil in these developing countries in Latin America is actually due to American policy. You did this. You did this. For me, the thing about the migrant situation that I think is unfortunate is, it continues to perpetuate a myth of American exceptionalism. I think that's the real, political utility of the migrant situation is that even though our own quality of living is stagnant at best, the fact that people are stuffing themselves in, rafts and, risking their lives to get here somehow I think makes Americans feel like we're in possession of something valuable. You must be. Everybody wants it. Everybody wants to be here. I must be pretty lucky to be here. And sometimes I wish that, and I'm sensitive to the immediate need of those families migrating, but I wish that they could focus on reform, both political and economic, to raise the standard of living in those countries so that migration wouldn't be a necessity. I think America will be better for that, and those nations would be better for that. I think that's a major part of American myth making. That everybody, if they could, would love to live in America. Everybody wants to live in America. Everybody. Americans believe that. I had a chance to have lunch with a friend who's living in Germany, and I asked him, having done a PhD in Germany and now teaching in Germany. He lived in Florence for a while. He lived in Zurich for a while. I said, man, he's been teaching in Germany for the last 10 years, teaching philosophy, Muslim, mashallah. I said, how do you look at Americans now? He said, man, I say this with love, no condescension. I feel sorry for Americans. Because many of them think this is the best there is. They really believe that. He said, working themselves to death. Their politics are a joke. Consuming the entertainment that we can only describe as base. This is not entertainment that, even if you're a secular humanist, this is not entertainment that brings out the best and most noble in the human being. Lives filled with useless, cheap, meaningless products. And yet Americans are convinced that life cannot get any better than this. I think part of that travesty is the fact that we see so many people trying to get here. Right? It helps us believe that this must be where it's at. Now, I want to say this. I love my country. I love my country, but not in a silly way. Not in a silly way. One thing that I've grown to understand is that people that are aware of America's history are uncomfortable with people saying they love America. You know why? Because usually saying you love America is justification for things your conscience shouldn't accept. That's what people don't like for you to say that. Now, the same people, they have no problem saying that they love certain localities. Like you may have, an activist, Black nationalist, spells America with 3 Ks when he writes it, but he'll say, South Side, West Side, West Side, West. I'm from Compton, I'm from CPT, Brooklyn. Because when they say South Side, or West Side, Compton, Brooklyn, the only thing they mean is home. See, when they say that, they just mean this is my home. This is a place that produced me. This is a place where I know what facial expressions and hunches mean, and they mean home. When I say I love America, I mean just like that, just as my home, not the political nonsense and America's history. No, this is my home. This is where I live, right? And I've traveled this nation. This is my home, right? But sometimes we can get a bit excessive, and I think the migrant struggle somehow justifies some of that. Like, oh, Americans, so. But I think we should be generous. We should be hospitable. We should be understanding, man. Never miss an opportunity. Whether you talk about migrant communities or Black communities, women, never miss an opportunity to lend your support to people struggling, right? Because when you spend time with people struggling, it reminds you that there is something bigger and more important than this, right? Because why else would you want to be with those people? Human beings can be very, very pragmatic. If we're pragmatic and self-interested, I would only want to spend my time with people that can help me. Meaning, if I was an ultra pragmatic person, the question I'm always asking is, what advantage for me is there in me being aligned with you? What money do you have? What influence do you have? Well, what am I going to get out of this? When you deal with people who have less, it's clear what I'm only here because I believe there's something bigger than this junction. I can't get any dunya out of helping these people. I can't get any money out of being with them if they don't have it. And that's why it's always an act of selflessness, and charity to go and serve people that cannot reciprocate. You don't have anything to give me. And that's okay, because mine comes from Allah. So that's what I think about. Bismillah ar-Rahman. Oh, go ahead. Yes.
I was talking with a friend now, and no Muslim, but we're talking about suffering and whatnot. And Muslim knowledge created the world without suffering. Why didn't he? And my response to him was just it's basically without suffering.
Of course.
And then Muslim left their bed, why didn't he invent it at that point? Does it become that? I was just at this point I thought of no, and I would say that's the other rationale. So bad.
الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا. God is the one that created life and death to test which of you is best in deed. That's it. And there is no test without struggle. A friend of mine was writing a movie script. And he said, man, bro, writing this movie script is one of the deepest things I've ever done in my life. He said, because if I want to show the audience any virtue that a character has, I have to write struggles into his story that he overcomes. I have to write struggles into her story that she overcomes. Such is the case of Allah and the creation of struggle in this world. You have virtue that will not be known unless you struggle. It will not be known unless you struggle. So, whenever you're thinking about that, just think about your story. And sometimes I find it helpful because we watch so many movies that if my life was a biopic and there was a viewing audience, what would they be saying about me as they were watching? Damn, slime ball. Look at him, weak, self-interested, stingy, selfish, can't overcome himself. Would never had the courage or the strength to do the right thing. Look at him, a failed character, and then the credits roll. Or will they see anything heroic in a character? Oh, it got shaky there for a minute, but she came back at the end. It got shaky there. I didn't know how it was going to end up, but in the end, she overcame her lower motives, her lower motivations, and did what was right. It was admirable. This man named Ali Izetbegovic, a former president of Bosnia, he used this idea to suggest that human beings have an inherent sense that there's something after this world. He said, because if they did it, if you saw somebody rush into a burning building to save a little girl, and he died in the process, you would say, damn fool. Why would he do something like that? No, but we all regard that person as a hero. We all regard him as, man, he did something heroic. We don't say, idiot, fool. There's nothing beyond this life. You gave yours up. What a silly man. No, he was motivated by something than just trying to preserve his own life. That's why it's heroic. Right? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim wal-'asr inna al-insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa 'amilu s-salihati wa tawasaw bil-haqqi wa tawasaw bis-sabr. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله.